to their PFACs during COVID-19. So again, I want to thank everyone for attending the meeting. I want to let everyone know the meeting is being recorded. And please contact Alana Sutherland or send a chat message if you're having any technical issues. So you can mute and unmute yourself using the small button that looks like a microphone at the bottom of the screen. So I do ask that you remain on mute when you're not speaking to cut down on the background noise. Please announce yourself when you're speaking. So you can send chat functions, but it does send a message to all the attendees. This technology does not allow you to send a chat to a specific attendee on this call. So there are a number of people in this meeting, so we'd like to sequence the speakers when possible. So please use the raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen when you'd like to speak. I may also call on people to give input as well. So at this time, I'm going to do a roll for the people who had RSVP to this invitation. And then I see that there are a lot of other people on the call, so you can just let us know when I say your name. If you just want to let us know what your role is in PFACs, that would be great. So the first person is Shirley Benjamin at Calvert Internal Medicine Group.
Hi, this is Shirley from Calvert Internal Medicine. I am a newly employed community health worker with the medical group, and I've been asked to take over the PFACs meetings and I guess moderate them and organize them. So this is new to me. They had their last PFACs before I got here, so I'm trying to get some ideas on what to do, what works best for other agencies, and just gain more information on that.
Do you have any experience in PFACs prior to coming to Calvert?
No, I do not.
Okay, so one thing that we can do is point you to some resources that we have. We have a guide that's free for all practices that's out on the internet, so we'd be happy to send that to you to help you out.
Thank you so much.
Sure, and you can reach out to any of the people at the commission as well. The second person I have is Andrea Brennan at Maryland Primary Care Physicians. Is Andrea on the line? Okay, maybe she's not on the line yet. Darby Bird from MedStar. Mina Ghaffari from Advanced Primary and Geriatric Care. Angela Palantano from Family Healthcare of Elkton. Denise Rubin Koenig from Anne Arundel, and I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce your name last night correctly.
Oh, no, that was perfect. That was fine. Hi, I'm Denise Rubin Koenig. I'm a primary care practice manager for Anne Arundel Medical Center in Easton. We have had 2 PFACs. We had one last year, and we just had one about 2 months ago.
Great. Are you guys part of the MDPCP?
Yes, we are. Yes.
So you're doing those to meet the care delivery requirements under the MDPCP?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
So yeah, I mean, we've had great success with our PFACs. We've gained a lot of valuable information from our patients, which we've actually implemented in the practice. So yeah, I mean, it's nice to see that view from the patient's perspective. And it gives you it's kind of like a guide, like, you know, it's always good to keep improving. And I think the patients appreciate it as well.
Great, great. Angela Wilde from Dunkirk Family Practice. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some. We have someone with a phone number ending in 31. Do you want to introduce yourself to the call? We have someone with a phone number ending in 38, if they'd like to introduce themselves.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I can.
This is Swarup Rao, primary care physician, and I just want to see what this is about and what we do PFAC in my office.
Okay, great. Are you the main staff that works with the PFACs?
Oh boy.
So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about how people have been changing their PFACs for in response to COVID. So that's one of the big things we're going to discuss today. So welcome to the call. We have Charlie Mars. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, this is Charlie. I'm with Calvert Internal Medicine, and I am a relatively new teammate at the practice, and I am here to assist Shirley with our PFAC process.
Great. Again, we're happy to send that guide out to you guys and help you, you know, as we can. So welcome to the call. Chastity Montgomery. Would you like to introduce yourself? Okay. Dina, would you like to introduce yourself? We have Evelyn Bryant. Would you like to introduce yourself? I'm sorry, Evelyn Bryant Ward.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. My name is Evelyn Bryant Ward. I'm the Director of Operations for the University of Maryland Charles Regional Medical Group. We are participants in the MD-PCP program. We have been having our PFAC meeting with our employees, providers, and MAs, but we have not yet incorporated the family members. So we are doing that this month. So we're here to hear basically how other individuals have done things and get some best practices.
Oh, great, great. That's what we're here to do is peer learning. So welcome, and we appreciate you joining us today. So we have someone from MHCC. Would you like to introduce yourself? Okay, and someone named Stacy, if they would like to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I work as a clinical manager with the Atlantic General Health System, and we also participate in MD-PCP. We have done multiple PFACs this year with our providers and clinical staff and some patients just in a socially distanced setting.
Great, great, thank you. Is there anyone else on the line who would like to introduce themselves before we get started going through the overview and purpose? Okay, well, we'll have plenty of chance today to interact. So what we're doing today is we're going to talk about how patient and family advisory councils, or PFACs, as all of you all know them, have evolved during the COVID-19 public health emergency and provide an opportunities for all the practices online to engage in interactive peer learning opportunity. So we're also going to be developing an addendum to MHCC's PFAC guide for ambulatory practices, which I mentioned earlier. And the addendum is going to be focused on the impacts associated with COVID-19 and the public health emergency based on these deliberations. So what we're going to do is, Aneta, do you want to bring up the first grid? So we're going to go through some grids which talk about benefits, opportunities, and challenges associated with some different topics from COVID-19. So the first discussion item that I'd like people to weigh in on is engaging the patient family advisors during the COVID-19 restrictions and how that's changed for your practice. So if anyone would like to give us input on either successes, challenges, or opportunities, feel free to raise your hand right now. Otherwise, we can start asking some kind of more targeted questions and I can call on people. But basically, it's how have you successfully engaged the PFAs during COVID-19, or what things have been particular challenges for you, and what do you feel are the opportunities that you would recommend to practices as we move forward on this? So Denise, would you like to weigh in a little bit? I know you guys have been very active in this area, so if you want to weigh in a little bit on maybe some successes you've had with engaging the PFAs.
Sure. Actually, we had the last PFAC that we had was back in October, and usually, you know, we have quite a few people that participate, but unfortunately, because of what's going on with COVID-19, we had a socially distanced PFAC, and we didn't have quite as many people there as we usually do. But it was very informative. Our practices as a result of COVID-19 have been consolidated. We were in a different location prior to the pandemic, and we consolidated with another primary care practice in Easton. So we had a combination of both practices working together with their patients. And the first PFAC that we had prior to COVID, I felt like we gained quite a bit more information from our patients as far as what we could do better, you know, wait times, how we could organize things better. In the after COVID PFAC, it was more or less, our doctors actually called it a love fest. I don't know if it was because they were just appreciative that we were there taking care of them. But we were in a new facility, and I was really interested in finding out, you know, what they liked better about the new office as compared to the old office. So, you know, we got a lot of positive information about our new location. Patient care, as far as they were concerned, was still, you know, it was good, if not better. So, you know, it was interesting. It was good to hear all the good things, but you know, you do want to hear some things that you can improve on. And you know, unfortunately, in the second PFAC, we didn't get a whole lot of that. So, you know, I find it hard to believe we're doing everything 100% great. But you know, that's what patients made us feel in the second PFAC. So I'm interested to, you know, have the next one and see if any of the information is different.
Thank you. That was really nice. Really nice feedback. Evelyn, would you like to weigh in a little bit on maybe some observations you guys have had about engaging PFAs following COVID-19?
So basically what we have tried to do, not incorporating the patients, but my providers and the medical staff, is understand how we can better deliver care, especially with our patients with hypertension and the high elevated A1Cs. How can we best engage them, given the fears around for most patients around coming into the office? The telehealth visits really did seem to help us improve upon our conversations with patients. I don't know why telehealth was so much different than meeting them face to face in the office, but they felt more comfortable and relaxed to share their concerns around their diseases. And so we wanted to figure out how we could better leverage telehealth, even, you know, once COVID is no longer in place, because we got better conversations from patients during the telehealth visits than we did in person. So that was one of the things that we identified. And then, of course, you know, talking to our providers about our notes and how we're capturing information as it relates to the conditions that we are being monitored with for the MDPCP program, and getting them to better understand their roles in this responsibility. So it really worked out well to sit and have those conversations and have those aha moments with the doctors.
Well, that's really interesting what you said about telehealth, and I'm wondering if it's because possibly people are more comfortable because they're in their home environment. But that's a really interesting observation. The commission has a grant right now for anyone who has not adopted telehealth. We're helping practices to do that and select a technology and train on the workflows. So if you guys are familiar with any practices that have not adopted, that are interested in adopting, we have an open grant right now to help people out. And we also have many telehealth resources on our website. I don't know how many people have looked on there, but we'd be happy to follow up with that after this meeting to send you some telehealth resources. Would anyone else like to weigh in on some successes, challenges, opportunities they feel the engaging their PFAs during the COVID-19 restrictions? Does anyone else like to weigh in on this? Okay, I'm just going to go to the top. Okay, so let's go ahead to the next grid, Nana. So the next grid deals with PFAC meeting facilitation. And would someone like to weigh in on how they have to facilitate their meetings differently now that they're basic? I'm assuming that most people are having virtual meetings. So how has that changed how you facilitate your meetings? And Angela, I think you're on the phone. Angela, would you like to weigh in on how you guys are facilitating meetings during the COVID restrictions? Okay, let's, how about Stacy? Stacy, do you guys have a PFAC currently?
Okay. Hang on one second. I'm echoing. Okay, you can hear me?
Yes,
Okay. So for us, what we did is all our offices are so different. So we haven't had one recently, but when we were still having them and it was actually nice outside, we would set up outside. So we were distanced, but, you know, still close enough to have a conversation. Or we would use an office meeting room or waiting room, whichever area was best to facilitate a group of people still maintaining social distance. Yeah, I told him that one already. And that seemed to work pretty well for us. We actually, as far as I know, I wasn't here for the first round of them because I just relocated here, but we still had a pretty good turnout for most of them. We had consistent patients come back yet again, but that worked best for us.
Okay, so you continued to have them in person. You just did them a bit differently than you normally would have. So you just had to be creative with where you were going to have them.
Exactly.
Okay. And Denise, did you guys do the same thing, or did you do them all virtually?
No, we actually had patients come to the office, socially distanced. In our previous PFAC, we had refreshments and things like that. Of course, in the second one during COVID, we still did, but everything was wrapped, but no one would partake in the refreshments in the second part. But I think on our next PFAC that we're going to offer Zoom meetings as well, possibly do it as a Zoom meeting and get a few more people to attend.
Are you going to offer, so they can do either? They can be virtual or in person? Is that how you're planning to do it?
Yes.
Okay. And Stacy, yours were you didn't offer a virtual component to yours for the last meeting?
So most of our patients came in person, but if we had staff that couldn't make it, then we would Zoom them in.
Okay.
For example, like our virtual care coordinator talking about patient communications and things, patient portal, those types of things. A lot of times she couldn't make it, so we would Zoom her in to talk with the patients. But for the most part, patients still came in masked the whole time. Even if we were outside, did masks and that type of thing.
Right. So Evelyn, what did you guys do? Did you do yours virtual, or did you do them a mix virtual in person, or are they in person?
Our meetings are in person. We have enough space to socially distant, and we try to be considerate of the provider's time. So we have them we have ours every month at the same time with the providers, and it's been working out. But I know that when we start to incorporate the patients, we will have to do something different. And we're thinking for the patient population that we serve, it will be probably by telephone.
So you're going to allow people to be on the phone and by computer? Is that what you're planning to do?
Yes.
Okay, virtually. Okay, great. And are you planning to change anything about the way you facilitate those meetings when you do them virtually?
No, we have every month we have particular things that we want to address. It's targeted areas of improvement in operations for our practice. So each month we try and focus on things that we identify as a challenge. Before our PFAC meeting, though, I assembled a team with MAs, clinical supervisor, practice manager, front desk coordinator, and nurse navigator, myself. And we talk about the things that we identify during, just daily operations. And so with those things that we identify and also looking at the data, we pull together an agenda for our PFAC meeting that would help us address these things with the providers. So there's a team in advance of the PFAC team, and we talk about the things that we've identified that are problematic for the practice and for the patient.
And thank you. And Andrea, are you still on the line? How have you guys been? Did you change your approach to PFAC meeting facilitation? I'm not sure if you're still on the line. Okay, so is there anyone else who would like to weigh in on the PFAC meeting facilitation changes that you've made or ask questions about PFAC meeting facilitation changes? Okay.
Hi, this is Darby from MMG St. Mary's.
Oh, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. As far as challenges are concerned, we've been holding PFAC meetings. They were in person prior to COVID. We held one in September. Our providers tried to identify patients, number one, that we thought would participate and give feedback, positive or negative. And then out of that group, we tried to identify the patients who had virtual capability that could be depended upon. So we would look at, were they already doing virtual video visits with us as patients, and then trying to identify them from that perspective so that we could try to have productive conversation. So I think technology is a challenge sometimes because, we're just not bringing patients in for meetings at this point.
And so how many have you done virtually?
Two.
Two?
Yeah,
and so that the input that you guys have gotten has been similar to what you got before?
Yeah, as far as participation is concerned, we had two people participate virtually in both of the virtual meetings. They were pretty tech savvy people, so they didn't have an issue with the virtual connections in the video visit. Some other people that had participated previously in person kind of shied away from participating because they were concerned on the technology that they wouldn't be able to really participate. So I think that's been discouraging to some patients of not having a comfort level in the technology area.
And how would you describe your practice? Do you think you're heavily weighted towards, a younger population, or more middle-aged, maybe more elderly? Where would you say most of your patients are?
So I'm an 8-provider practice. I have a pediatrician, I have an internal medicine, and I have 6 family practice. So my internal medicine provider is, of course, very heavy in the geriatric. My pediatrician, of course, very heavy in the young population. So we're kind of really in the middle of the mix.
Okay. And do your two advisors, or do they represent caregivers or patients?
Patients.
Patients. Okay. And are they middle, senior, or younger people?
Well, the two people, we had one, she was in her 40s, and we actually did have one lady that was in her late 60s, early 70s, do you know what I mean, that did participate virtually. She was pretty tech savvy.
Good. Okay. Great. Thank you for that. Would anyone else like to talk? I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Nope, thank you.
Would anyone else like to weigh in on on their PFAC meeting facilitation during the COVID-19 restrictions? Anyone else on the phone or online? Okay, and then we can go ahead and move to the next grid. So this actually ties into what you guys were just saying, which is the use of technology, which I think we talked about. So I feel like most of the people continue to use an in-person approach. Some people are doing virtual now. So can I ask you guys that we're doing the in-person, does the weather change that at all? I guess, Evelyn, I'm sorry, one of you was saying you had the meetings outside. So does that change how you're gonna, not Evelyn was doing them inside, I'm sorry. So the person who said they were having them outside, does that change how, Stacy, does that change how you're gonna do them now? Yeah.
We only did a couple of them outside only because it was a really nice day.
Okay.
If we had the space, it just really depended. There was no specific like, hey, we're doing this one outside. It just happened to be a nice day, so we decided to move them outside. And every office space is different. So, I mean, it varied. We made sure no matter where we were, we had the appropriate space, and whether inside or outside.
So when you did try to use technology to support your meetings, did you feel like it went pretty well for the people who did try to call in on Zoom or any other, or whatever you guys used?
So as I was saying before, we had some staff call in on Zoom.
Right.
I think the hardest part was more for the patient population that was actually in the meeting, because they were a bit older. So they had trouble hearing, they weren't there in person talking with them. So I feel like that was kind of a barrier for them to be able to hear everything they were saying and not have a face right in front of them to talk with.
Okay. And Denise, what about with you guys? How did you feel if people did use technology? Did you feel that it worked for your meetings, or?
We have not tried Zoom yet. Both meetings were all in person.
Everyone was in person, every single person.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. The next one that we're having, we're going to try that, hopefully to get more of a turnout.
Right.
My first PFAC, we had 8 people attend, and the second one, we only ended up with 4. So, we have 2 practices here. So I'd like to get more than 4 people to attend. I had a few repeats from the first meeting. I have one patient that enjoys it so much. He keeps asking me, when's the next one? When's the next one? But yeah, we're going to try to incorporate that on our next one. Like I said, just to get a better turnout.
So, Darby, would you, I know you said that, part of the problem, or that, that you guys did use the distance technology, correct? So do you want to weigh in on this at all, on the use of technology for the meetings?
So we did use Zoom. And like I said, we've tried with the people who are willing to participate in the meetings, which we've had a decent amount of response, to be honest, especially when we were having them in person, is we try to have that conversation up front with them and identify that we're going to use Zoom. This is the technology that's going to be needed on your end, and try to provide them support from the beginning. We have, through MedStar, we have the ability through our Blue Stream to do a testing type situation with them. And so we'll try to do a test with them in advance, do you know what I'm saying? And then answer any questions on connectivity or anything that they may be having trouble with, so that we can, the day of the actual meeting, we can help facilitate it better for them.
Oh yeah, that's nice. That's a nice feature to have. And do you guys exclusively use Zoom for your meeting?
We are currently right now. My practice in particular averages anywhere from 140, 160 patients still coming through the practice with 8 full-time providers. So space has been of concern. So we don't want to introduce any unnecessary meetings or anything of that nature. Historically, I have a meeting room, so we've been able to hold our PFACs in that, but we're actually using our meeting room for overflow, other issues in COVID. So it's strictly via Zoom right now for safety.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Okay. Would anyone else like to weigh in on the use of technology for their PFAC meetings, and if that's changed after COVID? I'll give everyone a minute, and then anyone else? Okay, so we can go to the next grid then. Okay, so this is ensuring equitable representation of the patient population as opposed to the in-person meetings prior to COVID-19. So Denise, I think you were the one who was saying like you had more people before. Was that, my apologies if I'm have the wrong person. Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you think the people who showed up after the COVID-19 restrictions was different than before? And how you think you might be dealing with that?
Yeah, well, the first meeting we had, quite a few of our patients were older population, Medicare. And in the second meeting, we had a pretty good, like I said, we only ended up with 4 patients. But there was every age group represented there. I had an elderly gentleman, I had a woman that was younger, and I had 2 other patients that were kind of like middle-aged, and 2 that were middle-aged. So we ended up with 1 elderly person as the patient that loves coming to the meetings. He wouldn't miss them for anything. But no, it was funny because the first meeting was basically all Medicare patients that came. And
so
I couldn't
broadened a little bit, right? It actually did the opposite, and it broadened a little bit for you.
Yeah, it did. And some of the patients I had invited the first time, I invited them to the second meeting, and they didn't want to participate the second time. So it was interesting that, and I think some of the youth coming in, the younger people coming in, has to do with the practice that we joined with, because my original practice, we have a large elderly population, large Medicare population. And the new practice that we're with, their patient population is a little different. So, it allowed us to get some of the younger patients in as well.
Nice. And Stacy, thank you for that. Stacy, would you like to weigh in on how you feel COVID-19, did it change, or do you feel like the composition is the same?
Well, as I said before, I wasn't there for the previous meetings that they had. But I do believe that for the most part, they had the same people join again, come back again. I know for sure there was one meeting where 2 people could not come because one person was ill, and another person did not feel comfortable. But I think for the most part, in every other office, they had the same patients come back again, which was pretty good.
Okay, so you feel like the representation for your patient population was the same before and after. And Evelyn, you haven't had patients be part of them yet, correct?
No, I felt like we had too many things. This was our first year with the MDPCP. And as we started to, understand our workflows, I felt like we had too many things to work out internally. Right. And so we plan to have our first meeting that includes the patients this month.
And do you feel that the patients who agreed to come to the meeting are representative of your overall patient population?
I do. We've invited a family member. We've invited a patient with hypertension, a patient with an uncontrolled diabetes. And our patient population is from middle, we don't have any teens hardly, anybody below 20, hardly anybody in their 20s. So we're like the mid, 30s to 70s. And so I think we did incorporate those folk very well.
Great. And Darby, would you like to weigh in on if you feel like the representation has changed after COVID-19 as far as the actual advisors who come to your meetings?
I think the representation with the one in September changed a little bit. The previous in-persons, we have population that go up to the late 90s, early hundreds. We have patients over 100 years old. And we actually, in-person wise, we had a couple of the 80-year range participating, wanted to come and give feedback, especially the ones that had been my internal med physician has been in practice for 45 years. So they had been with him for 45 years and they wanted to give feedback. So I think like I said earlier, the one that we had on the last virtual that was probably late 60s, I think that has cut down the age group a little bit. They prefer to be more in person, and technology challenges them a little bit more. Not that they can't do it. It's some of them still have flip phones. They don't have, the technology because they don't use it for anything else other than to call somebody.
Right. I mean, we heard that early on as one of the telehealth issues. It's not that they didn't know how to use it, but they don't necessarily have a phone or a computer that will accommodate that type of technology. So sometimes they had to have a child or grandchild who kind of would help them with that. Which is why, of course, the audio only was so popular. But we won't go down that road on this call. That's a different work group that the commission does.
Yeah, different whole conversation.
Yeah, different conversation. I won't go down that rabbit hole with you guys. Okay, so this is great. So does anyone else want to weigh in on about how the representation of their patient population changed after COVID-19? Would anyone else online or on the phone like to weigh in on that? Okay, so I want to kind of open it up now for practices to ask questions if they'd like to other practices and to talk about things maybe that we didn't specifically hit on today. And then I will follow up and let you guys know. We're planning to have 2 additional meetings. They'll be the same content and the same type. You're welcome to come back and listen to hear what other practices say. But what we're hoping to do is to get a broad range of input on how people are adapting their PFACs. But I'll open it up now for practices to weigh in and ask each other questions if they'd like to. So would anyone online like to ask questions to another practice?
I have a question.
Sure, great.
So I think that we're kind of running out of things to talk about. So what kind of topics, with telehealth, we started with customer service. That was obviously a topic. Workflows was a topic at one point, but now all of that's kind of limited because if you're doing telehealth, it's workflows are kind of non-existent because you just hop on with the provider and go from there.
So how many meetings have you guys had total, if you don't mind me asking?
So we have not, honestly, had one since COVID started because of my population. My population for my patients, we have a total of 25 members and most of them are geriatrics and most of them wanted to do it in person. So we haven't been able to get together to actually hold a meeting since COVID hit.
So I would, I can point you to some resources that we have, and we can send you an email if you contact Anena and give her your email address. We're happy to send you an email with resources, but I'd be interested to hear from the other practices how they come up with topics for their PFAC meetings. So go ahead.
Yeah, we've used, especially during this time, we use this time to also communicate changes that are going on with COVID and allow patients to ask us questions about that. So that usually is, it's only meant to be a small chunk of time, but usually turns into a bigger chunk of time because sometimes they don't know the resources that we provide or that are out there for them. So that has been one thing that it's turned into a long discussion. It's just updates on the situation, answering their questions, what resources they have out there, and those types of things.
Great, thank you, Stacy. Does anyone else want to answer the question?
So this is Shaska Centennial. And I hopped on a little late. I was in clinic, but so for our PFAC, what we've done historically is we try to guide the topics based on changes in the practice and care approaches. So we're always focused on care delivery and care transformation. So we kind of survey our population of PFAC patients in advance of the PFAC meeting to find out kind of what maybe some pain points are. For instance, we did want to know about our phone system. So we surveyed our patients to say, what's been your experience with the phone systems? And we actually made some changes to our phone system based on, the patient feedback. And we asked them a few other, care management questions. One question we just asked was, hey, what would you do if you needed medical care at 9:30 at night? We wanted to see if our patients knew that we had walk-in urgent care attached to our practice, or if they would consider going to the emergency room, or even if they knew that we have an on-call provider that will answer the phone for them, even at 9:30 at night. So we basically use some of the care transformation for population health or for MDPCP to kind of survey and poll our patients to see how they utilize care and make sure it's in line with how our practice, what our services, our practice offers, and how we really want patients to utilize care in our practice services we offer. We learned that a lot of patients didn't know we even had urgent care, and we learned a lot of patients didn't know we offered heart labs or did DEXAs on site at our primary care office. So really, we use as an opportunity to find out what our patients know about our practice, how they would utilize care, and just use the discussion topic around that. And then we learned that there was a lot of things our patients didn't know about our practice. So then we asked them, how do you want this information? What's going to work for our patients? And we have an older population as well. We actually have a mixed population. I have two providers who've been in practice for over 35 years. So they have a lot of geriatric patients. And then we have some providers who are newer to our practice. They tend to have a younger demographics. So our PFAC panel is very mixed. We have some younger, some older, some new patients to the practice, and even some patients who've been with us since the beginning. But really just identifying how they like to hear from us.
Yeah, so this is great information. So how do you survey them? Do you do that electronically, or do you actually when in the office? Like, is it an email that goes out to people?
So we did a couple of things. So because we do have a mixed population of our PFAC, at the beginning of the PFAC, when we elected, nominated patients for PFAC, we asked them, how do you want us to communicate specifically with you? And we asked for 2 ways of communication. We had a few people actually say snail mail, which was a surprise. We had a couple of patients say snail mail, and then we had a few said email, a few said text messages is fine, others said phone call. So we contact the patients based on how they want to be contacted. We have a panel of 29 now, we lost one, but 29 PFAC patients for our practice, and it varies. So when we survey our patients, we survey them based on what they prefer. So I use a system called Health Talk right now that we're transitioning to. At first, we were using SurveyMonkey and all kinds of things like that. We're transitioning to Health Talk because I can send out surveys via email. I can print surveys and mail them, or I can send them via text message. We have the patient sign a communications waiver that'll allow us to communicate back and forth with them. We ask them not to send any PHI, through the surveys, and the surveys are very more practice-centric versus patient, specific patient scenarios. But we'll communicate with them however they want, because that's how we get the best engagement from patients. It has to work for them.
And what do you find are the kind of the most common topics that people seem to be interested in? Is it kind of like the setting up appointments, how your office is set up type of thing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, not necessarily appointment, but so we moved into care teams. So we did have to pair patients and panel them within care teams. And in the beginning, when we did that, patients were like, well, what the heck? I usually see this provider or this provider, and they're not on the same care team. Can I see these providers? We talked a lot about some of the care transformation things that we did, make for our practice for better continuity. But patients wanted to know about it. And really patients are the same to me. I manage staff members, and they're the same as staff members. They want to know the why. If you give people the why, usually there's a just that they can understand it. But communicating the why was so important to our PFAC team. Once they understood it, they were saying, if someone would have told me that in the beginning, that would have made more sense. if this is better continuity, if I didn't know my care team was meeting. I didn't know the two providers would meet on a weekly basis about their complicated and sick patients. So now understanding the why. So a lot of the common questions was about care transformation, why we made changes in the practice, what changes are to come. And then they can help us transition through the changes from the patient perspective. So sometimes we give them a heads up, hey, heads up, next year we're going to be doing this, this, and this. These are our focuses that we've been doing now. We now have the pharmacist who's able to do this, this, and this. We hired a diabetic, educator for this, this, and this. And
an in-house educator?
Yeah, we have a diabetic educator. She's a pharmacist who's also a diabetic educator. So she does our MTM and she does our diabetic engagement for our patients, just educating them. We also have a dietitian, and she does certain types of visits as well. But we needed to know from our patients, how do we get you guys to see these providers? And so a lot of what we ask them is, how do we do this so it's patient centric? What works for you guys? And because we have a diverse and mixed panel of patients, it really does help us understand. I mean, how a 80-year-old utilizes healthcare is completely different than how a 30-year-old might utilize healthcare. So we really needed to understand that from the patient's perspective. So usually with engaging PFAC members, it's usually just understanding how they want care delivered, how they want information delivered, for them. How do they receive information so that they can know, so we can guide their healthcare. So they feel like they're being stepped through our office. We're bigger practice with a lot of moving parts, but even at a small practice, I could see how patients could feel lost or not understand something in the healthcare system, especially when people get busy and staff members aren't able to sit with you and explain how things, workflows in the office are.
So again, that's really helpful information, I believe. So when you guys first started out, because I feel like there's some people in this call who are new to PFACs, doing their first PFACs. When you guys had your first PFAC meetings, what were some of the topics that you talked about at those very first meetings when you first started?
Okay, so we brought up the phones. I brought up the elephant in the room. I said, let's go ahead and talk about the phones because I know it's bad. The elephant in the room, like the waiting on hold, the call trade, we brought that up. That was number one. I wanted to get that out of the way. We also did the care teams, like I mentioned. So I knew a lot of patients would be like complaining. I have been seeing Dr. Gibbons for 20 years. Now you're going to tell me I got to see Siobhan when he doesn't have an appointment available. So we brought up the care teams. We also talked about a little bit about care management. We talked about, we wanted to decrease ER and hospital utilization. So I talked about, what do you guys do when there's an emergency? What do you guys do? And, I asked patients that, and it became a discussion topic. So we kind of circled around all of the things that practices really need to do for care transformation. And we talked about those subjects. I literally just talked about, hey, our practice is trying to do better with diabetic engagement. I'm not sure if any of you guys are diabetic. I don't want to know, but what do you guys suggest us to do to engage our most complicated and sick patients? And I had a patient to say, I'm not diabetic, but my wife is, and she's not here, but, maybe longer appointments for diabetics. Sometimes she's in the room with the provider for 15 minutes and she's got tons of questions. And if she only has 15 minutes with the doctor or 10 minutes with the doctor, that's not enough time to get all her things addressed. So maybe she needs more time with the doctor. And those type of things were important to us because when we're looking at care delivery, the patient perspective is so important. So we brought up a few things. There's like some of them were chronic disease management, disease specific. Some of them were services that the practice offers or services that they wish the practice offered, which we found out that there are a lot of services that the practice offers that patients just didn't know we offered. And then they brought up some good points, saying, hey, you guys don't really have a good program for behavioral health. My husband comes here, sometimes he's depressed, and I feel like that those visits are rushed. You guys don't have this, that, and the other. So we ended up working on that, and now we have a whole behavioral health program embedded in our practice. We onboarded a psychiatrist who works only 2 shifts a month, but those 2 shifts a month are so valuable because he's trained our staff and our team on how to navigate through behavioral health patients, and he does consults for our providers, so behavioral health patients can at least get an initial consult, and he creates a care plan for those patients. And some of them he'll follow, and some of them the PCPs follow. But we've been able to basically ask our patients, what do you guys need from us?
Wow, that sounds like a really productive first meeting you guys had.
Yeah, it was about an hour long. We used our front lobby. This is before COVID. We used our front lobby, and we were able to actually set up chairs and tables. And believe it or not, I actually cooked for the entire PFAC panel. I cooked dinner for them.
Oh, wow.
So I have to I have to show you guys pictures, but I actually cooked for the entire PFAC panel. I'm trying to remember what we cooked that first meal. I know the second meal we did meatloaf. I actually cooked meatloaf. I did a meatless meatloaf and a real meatloaf, but I think we did a meal for them the first meeting. I can't remember what I cooked to save my life, but that's January of last year, I believe. And then we did a second meeting, and then a third meeting. And before COVID, we did a very last meeting in January before COVID. And then after that, we just started doing the monthly surveys. One of our nurses who's on our care, our PFAC panel, she helped by creating the monthly newsletters that go out to the PFAC patients, just with updates and changes that the practice has made because of COVID. And we got feedback from patients for surveys, like, you know, what do you feel, what would make you feel safe coming into the practice? If, you know, what would make you feel safe? And some of the patients really came up with some really great ideas that we used. They said, hey, just, you know, can you have somebody walking around cleaning all day? That way we know if I sit on this chair, someone's cleaned it, you know, or, you know, are your chairs socially distanced? Can you guys have us wait in our car and call you when we're here? You know, things like that we've done in our practice because our PFAC panel was able to share that with us over survey.
Have you had any actual meetings since COVID, either virtually or in person?
We have not had a real virtual meeting. We've had the PFAC surveys go out. My panel of patients could not decide how they wanted to do this. There was really not a consensus. We surveyed them at the beginning of the pandemic, and most of them just said they were comfortable doing the surveys. So a lot of the panel said that they would be open to doing a call. The younger population was like, oh, let's just connect via Zoom. The older population was like, what's Zoom? So we just continued doing the surveys. The last survey that went out advised them that we were really going to start going to a virtual platform, and that if we gave them a phone number, we asked if we gave you a phone number, if you couldn't connect via Zoom, how likely are you to dial in? You know, 0 being not going to call in at all, 5 would be very likely. And our average score was a 3.5, which that was enough for me to say it's worth doing a Zoom meeting. So our plan is to have our very first Zoom meeting, virtual meeting in January.
Oh, great. Very nice. Very nice. Would anyone like to weigh in on the question from Dunkirk about how to pick a topic for your, especially when you're first starting out in your PFACs? Would anyone else like to weigh in on it? Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for other practices? We just have a couple more minutes, but I'll entertain one more question if anyone on the line has a question while we have the practices here. Okay, so I'm not hearing any additional questions. I do want to thank everyone greatly for their time. We will certainly send you out the link to the resources that we've mentioned on this meeting. You're welcome to reach out to anyone on this call if you would like additional resources after you look through the links that we've sent you. And we're happy to, you know, spend time with you going through the resources that the Healthcare Commission offers. All of our resources are free to everyone. So, you know, feel free to use us and use those resources that we have out there. Again, we will be having 2 more of these meetings with additional practices that have indicated interest. Certainly anyone on this call is welcome to weigh back in if you'd like to hear what other practices have to say. And let us know how we can be of help in any way. This meeting was recorded and it will be put up online. And then we'll put the links to the resources. And Anna, is there anything else you can think of that we need to tell people before we close out today?
I can't think of anything else. We will send those resources, like Melanie said, to the people who requested them. And if you also want the resources, please feel free to email me and I'll be sure to point you in the right direction. Melanie, looks like somebody has her hand raised.
Their hand, okay.
Oh, I asked about questions and my microphone was on mute. Has any practices lost PFAC members over this time? I don't know if anyone has been doing PFAC and just has lost members on their committee. And what do you guys recommend for getting patients back in or replacing those patients in PFAC. I mean, what I don't know what everyone's experience has been. That's my biggest concern is after we start our first virtual, we might lose some PFAC members.
So would someone who's experienced that like to weigh in on it by any chance? Whether they've lost some participants when you went to more virtual or after COVID?
So I can say we did lose a few, not that we lost them, they just did not want to attend in person, but they did ask me to contact them the next time that we had another meeting. So, you know, I'll find out on this next meeting how many people will actually come back. And then when we try to implement the Zoom meeting, that'll give a lot of additional information as well as, you know, are they capable of doing it? And, you know, we'll take it from there. But no, as far as we have not lost anybody, we just lost participation, but they still want to be part of the PFAC.
Okay.
So, Shaska, we're happy to follow up too. We'll ask this question for you at the next meeting and let you know if people give us feedback on that one. Make sure that Anene has your email so that she can let you know. And then was there another question? Did someone have their hand up and took it back down? Mina, maybe? Okay, looks like their hand's back down. Okay, so anyone else, any final questions before we hang up today? And again, I just want to really thank everyone. Peer learning is so important for our Maryland practices, and we greatly appreciate you taking the time today to contribute to other people's success in care delivery here in Maryland. Thank you very much. Everyone have a great day.
You too, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.